You heard the
Yes.
president, when he gave his New Year message to Nigerians. I would like to have your quick reaction to that. What are the major highlights for you as a person and as a financial analyst? What will be of interest to you in that New Year address?
Well, I think the first thing to note from that address is the president's very deliberate effort and choice of words to transmit hope and hopefulness to the people of Nigeria. Yeah, so he used positive words, talking about thanking God, being grateful to God. He talked about the fact that things were going to get better. Tried to show some sort of empathy, with the challenges that Nigerians are currently facing as a result of his decisions. So all of this, tends to portray an impression that the president is trying, probably based on feedback from Nigerians that have been complaining, is trying to show empathy and trying to transmit a message of hope. And I think, it's a good thing. It's the right way to go. You have to use the words that will galvanize hope and energy of Nigerians. You have to galvanize their support for your policies, because if you do not have their support, you will fail. So that's on a very softer side of things. Looking into the speech in its entirety, I'm not sure he said anything significantly different from the things that we've heard from him in his last 2 or 3 addresses to the country, with regards to the general direction of his administration, and maybe, if you would like, his political economic philosophy. So clearly, what we're seeing is a president and an administration that is going to be pursuing a neoliberal philosophy of economic management that, in my opinion, is probably driven by international, multilateral, and foreign interests, rather than what is in the best interest of Nigeria at this time. So I know that he did say that every decision he has made since assuming office on May 29th last year has been in the best interest of Nigeria. I'm not particularly convinced about that. I think that a lot of those decisions, yes, may have been necessary, but were they decisions that we needed to take, in the manner that we took them, without adequate preparation? It was almost as if we were being rushed by some unseen hand. And that, for me, is probably the biggest challenge that this president is going to face. But all in all, the speech was a good speech, said all the right things, made all the right promises. We have to now look. Today is the 1st of January 2024. The year is fresh and lies ahead of us. So will those promises, those statements of intent, will they translate into actual action? Will they translate into policy implementation? Will we see the impact and the effect on Nigerian people's lives, in the immediate term? Or are we going to see people suffer some more before things get better? Or are we going to see people suffer some more and things simply don't get better? All of these things are still up in the air, and everything is going to come down to the ability of the president to implement some of the policy statements that is pronounced, and to implement the budget effectively, even though the budget, in my opinion, is also probably not big enough to solve the challenges that the country faces at the moment. But I think, all in all, it's a credible speech that the president delivered.
All right. Now, let's look at some of the specifics of this speech, which the president seized this opportunity to reiterate its action in respect to removal of fuel subsidy, which he took a few months ago. According to the president, he is aware of the pain that Nigerians are going through. But are you optimistic that the removal of fuel subsidy would justify the essence of this removal in a matter of months, and that Nigerians will be happy for this tough decision made by the president?
I mean, in order for Nigerians to be happy with that decision, I think it's important that we just break it down into very simple terms. What has happened to the Nigerian is that as a direct result of that policy statement, the life of the average Nigerian has become significantly more difficult. His disposable income has been eroded significantly. On the one hand, his revenue and income streams have not increased, but all his expenses have increased significantly as a result of that policy. So the Nigerian is not happy. For the Nigerian to be happy as a result of that policy, it will then imply that the effects or the outcomes of that policy that he is feeling today will either be taken away, or there will be new factors that will come into play that would help ameliorate the impact of the policy on them. So you've taken subsidies away, supposedly and arguably resulting in a savings of anywhere between 3 trillion to 4 trillion naira for the half year last year. And if you extrapolate that, you would argue that that will save you 6 trillion naira for this year. What will happen to that 6 trillion naira? What will it be done? What will be done with it? And how will those things have a direct impact and bearing on the lives of Nigerians? This is the key to whether Nigerians will be happy as a result of that decision or not. And just from a basic knowledge of how economies run, it's pretty much almost impossible to say that Nigerians will be happy as a result of that decision this year. That decision was taken 6 months ago, 7 months ago. And to say that Nigerians will be happy as a result of that decision this year is unrealistic. It's not true. Simply because it will take time for the gains and the savings that are made from that decision, if there is any, to translate, to be deployed to the activities, investment channels and outlets, infrastructure spending, and all of that, that will impact the life of Nigerians in practical terms quickly. That is not going to happen this year. If you look at FAC allocations for last year, you have to keep asking yourself, where is the subsidy savings? Because there hasn't been any significant increase in the revenues distributable across the 3 tiers of government as is done on a monthly basis. We didn't see a significant impact. What we saw was a significant rise in the revenues as a result of devaluation. Where is the subsidy savings remains a question that we need to keep asking the administration. So if we have not seen the subsidies savings in government revenues that government will then use to execute social investment activities, then how can Nigerians be happy as a result of that decision when their cost of living has immediately escalated as a result of that decision? So for me, that statement needs to be examined thoroughly to see how real and practical, pragmatic that it is. For me, it almost sounds like hope peddling, when in truth the reality on ground may not tally with the content of that statement.
All right, still on the president's statement on the issue of subsidy, what do you think the president will have done differently, with the manner to which subsidy was removed? And what would you expect him to do now in the new year to consolidate on the gains of removal of fuel subsidy?
Sorry, you were breaking a bit. I didn't catch it. I got the gist of what you're saying, but I think it would be nice if you could repeat.
Okay, what I'm trying to say is that what do you think the president will have done differently? We're still talking about the president's statement or removal of subsidy, which was one of the tough decisions he had to make last year. So reviewing that kind of action, what do you think the president will have done differently in the approach to the removal of the subsidy And then now that we're in 2024, what would you expect him to do to consolidate on the gains from the removal of fuel subsidy?
Well, in terms of what he should have done differently, I'm a bit of a centrist in my political economic philosophy, and I think that subsidies are not bad in themselves, and this is it can be buttressed by what even the most ardent capitalist economies and societies do. The United States of America, the United Kingdom, the EU, Germany, they all have various types of subsidies. And in some instances, those subsidies are consumption subsidies. They subsidize consumption, not production, contrary to what a lot of people would argue and would push. So I am not in support of the subsidy removal. I have never agreed that it was a problem. Yes, we had a fiscal challenge. Yes, the fiscal accounts, in quotes, of our federal government was not balancing and was in jeopardy. But I have never agreed, and it's difficult to convince me that the reason for that was fuel subsidies. I think that there are other problems that still remain and that still exist, and that will continue to prevent Nigerians from probably benefiting from potential gains of that policy in the first instance. And if you don't fix those issues, then if you remove subsidy or you don't remove subsidy, the fiscal challenges that the government is experiencing will continue. For example, why would Nigeria, with the population that we have, 200 million plus, some will say 220 million, some will say 215 million, be cutting a budget that is about $32 billion? You know, it's a joke. That figure will take us nowhere. And the reason for that is that our government is simply not tracking or capturing or collecting all the revenues that are accruable to it as a result of its activities. We have a lot of leakage, revenue leakages in the activities of our government that has not been addressed. You need to address that. If you don't address that, if you take all the subsidies you want to take away, the revenues will continue to disappear. You know, so that for me, in terms of what the president could have done differently, I would have expected that even if you want to take subsidies away, as part of the ways of boosting government revenues by saving, what you are spending on the subsidies, you had to have a more measured, well-planned, well-articulated approach to that process. It's not the kind of decision you can take offhandedly. It's not the kind of decision that you can take flippantly. You must have a contingency plan for the obvious repercussions and immediate impact that this subsidy removal would have on the people, as we have seen. So if you ask me what I would have done differently, I would have said, we should have had a programmed implementation that would maybe take an 18-month time frame. In that 18 months, you could have prepared the people, put some policies in place, made arrangements for things that would cushion the effect of the subsidy removal and all that, and then takes the subsidies away. And I think that going into 2024, to the second part of your question, in terms of what the president can do, or what the government can do to make things better, I think it's probably, it might sound simplistic, but I think it's probably governing with accountability. With accountability and transparency, I think this is probably the most critical thing that the government needs to do at this moment. The decision has been taken. There is no going back on it. The Nigerian people would expect to see reciprocity from government with regards to the impact that these policies are having on them. So you can't, on the one hand, ask people to tighten their belts because you've taken these very difficult decisions. And on the other hand, there is absolutely no sign, none, zero, of government also recognizing, the exigencies of the times and the moment and taking difficult decisions to help reduce the cost of governance, to help reduce the burden that you are placing further on the people by spending so much money on all of the things that the government has been spending on. Where is the effort to reduce, the wage bill of the government, for instance? And you can look at all of the other overheads that the government across all tiers of government have, and you will see that there are opportunities to make savings from those things. So those types of things are things that the president needs to address this year in order to gain the support of a larger percentage of the population.
About made reference to foreign exchange system, you know, which has so far benefited the few, the rich. Earlier, you know, the president decided to float the naira. What do you make of this decision, you know, to allow the parallel rate and the unparalleled rate to run concurrently? What has been the impact of this decision on the market, and how do you see this turning out in year 2024?
Well, I mean, so the first thing that we need to understand, of course, is that there is nothing that the government can do with regards to having the parallel rates run concurrently with the official rates. This idea of unification of exchange rates, if you ask the people that initiated that policy, the idea was never about unifying the official rates with the parallel market rates. That's you know, if you achieve that, then what you're basically saying is that the parallel market will cease to exist. It's possible, you know, I mean, there are, in more efficiently run economies, there is nothing like a parallel market. You simply have, you know, the foreign exchange market, whether, you know, you go to the banks or you go to the bureau d'exchange, you know, on the street corners. But you don't have individuals, you know, malams in quotes, individuals walking the streets and trading hard currency, you know, for local currency. You know, that's an aberration. It's a sign of the inefficiency and the imbalances in our economy. To take that away is a completely different conversation. So the unification of the exchange rate was not about unifying the official rate with the parallel market rate. It was about unifying the multiple official rates that we had. So at a point, we had up to about 6 different official rates. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but that's what we're doing. So you had rates for manufacturers, different from rates from the airline industry, different from rates for, you know, the oil and gas sector, different from rates for, you know, entrepreneurs and small businesses. So what the president did was to unify all of those official rates and then hope that by also devaluing the currency at the same time, that you could then have some sort of convergence between the official rates and the parallel market rates. As we have seen, that has not happened. And the reason that has not happened is very simple. It's a simple, you know, game of demand and supply, coupled with the exchange control regulations that we have in the official market being so stringent that you inadvertently drive people into the parallel market. You know, so the president has a challenge on his hands of trying to push for convergence of these two rates as much as they can. Should we have devalued the currency? I don't think we should have at the time that we did. Should we have driven for convergence of rates? Absolutely. Should we have driven for unification of rates? Absolutely. So what should have happened and what we could have done was to have taken away all the multiple rates in the official market and have only one single official rate for all transactions, regardless of what sector you are demanding the foreign exchange from. And then to leave the official rates continuing, you know, supported, you know, by the CBN the way it had been done, whilst you then ensure that supply is enough to prevent demand from going into the parallel market rate, which would drive convergence further, or which would drive divergence further. That is what we should have done. Now, by devaluing the naira and then saying that you are floating the currency without being in control of supply, what you've done is that you've simply left your exchange rates, you know, to the vagaries of the free markets. And we have seen the outcome of that official rate, which started at 700 naira when the unification policy was pronounced, has now hit 850 naira. And parallel market rates, which started at about 750 when unification was pronounced, has gone as high as 1,300 at a point, is back now trending at around 1,150 to 1,200. So clearly, the policy is not working. When you bear in mind the impact, the dependence of the Nigerian economy on the dollar, on imports, then you realize how challenging, you know, the kind of challenges that this policy has created. It's further worsened the inflationary pressures that subsidy removal had already created. The inflationary pressures that had already existed even before subsidy removal. So now what you have is that you have inflationary pressures from the major structural inefficiencies we had in the economy on the one hand. Now combine that with subsidy removal, combine that with devaluation, you can see why there's such chaos as far as prices are concerned, and the economic stability and the standard of living of the Nigerian people. So the president has a lot of work to do with regards to this issue of exchange rate management if we're going to see a better 2024.
One of the things the president also talked about is the high cost of living in Nigeria, the high cost of inflation. According to the last figure released by the Nigeria Bureau of Statistics in November, the inflation is at 28.2%. Talk to us, what do you think will be the impact of these in this year as we set out for the new year? And what are your expectations from the Tinubu-led administration in ensuring that they provide respite to Nigeria when it comes to Nigerians, when it comes to the high cost of living and high inflation? It's been double digits over the months, and then what do you think can be done to ensure that you have stability in the market and you can ensure that there's proper growth and development for the Nigeria economy?
Well, in terms of my expectations with regards to the cost of living challenge that we currently face as a country, sadly, our truth is that it's going to get worse, even if it's going to get better. So I'm not going to say it's going to get worse before it gets better, because the things that we need to do to make it get better, I don't know that it will be done. So I would say it's going to get worse, even if it will get better. I think what we can expect for certain is that inflation rate, when the rate for December will be released by the Nigeria Bureau of Statistics, will be higher than 8.2, probably be trending above 29. And probably will maintain that upward trend, into the first quarter of 2024, which means things are getting worse. And all you have to do is take a look around you to see why I say that. What they call the eye test. Just take a feel of what's happening in the market. When you go to the market, are prices coming down? And how quickly are they going up? You have certain commodities. You have certain commodities that are increasing. You make to the market every 2 or 3 days. You have to ask for what the price is today. So if you look at that, then you realize that inflation is still on an upward trajectory. So it's likely getting worse. That's not to say that as individuals and as individual Nigerians, individual businesses, that we can't, we produce a lot of the food that we eat in this country, and we import quite a bit as well. So when you balance the issues surrounding insecurity in our food basket, the unfortunate events of the Christmas killings in Plateau State comes to mind readily when you talk about this. And that's just an example of the kind of things that are still happening in that area. Plateau State, Nasarawa State, Benue State, a lot of the northern states where a lot of our food the food that we eat as a country gets produced, people can't go to their farms. In some of those places, the farms are actually under the control of bandits and terrorists, and those bandits tax the farmers to protect them, in quote. So there's the insecurity surrounding the food production, which is placing supply pressure on food in that area. And then, of course, you have to look at the logistics of moving food, across the country from the producing areas. Then you have to look at the impact of exchange rate devaluation on the imported components of our food supply. So that's one thing to look at if you're looking for solutions. And, because for you to solve a problem, you have to identify the problem first, analyze it, and then begin to provide solutions to them, in a systematic manner. And then you look at the other, aspects of, the rising cost of living. You look at transportation costs, which is directly, linkable to subsidy removal. You look at the cost of education, for example, and you can just go on across the consumer price index basket, and you find that all of those things are being impacted by policies of government. So what can we do to reduce and to bring the escalating inflation back under control. The first thing that I probably would want to say is that what we should not do. I've heard people advocate for increasing interest rates, asking the CBN to increase the MPR monetary policy rate further from the 18.75, I think, or is it 18.5% that it is now, increasing that further. The argument there is that because inflation is so high, you need to bridge the gap between inflation and the returns on savings and investments in the country, so you have to increase interest rates. But my challenge with that is that if you increase that, then you increase the cost of lending. And if you increase the cost of lending, manufacturers and people that are engaged in productive activities that depend on credit to do their businesses, their cost of inputs will further increase, and you worsen the inflation problem. So in a situation where your inflation is cost push, increasing interest rates can only do so much. At some point, you have to look, in other directions for controlling this. So for me, the government needs to look at exchange rates, look at policies that will help quickly rein the value of the naira in, quickly try and boost supply into the market so that the naira can gain value against the dollar as quickly as possible. That would be an immediate solution, to the inflation problem. Subsidies have been removed. There's very little that you can do with regards to that. The impact that has had on transport costs and a lot of the other costs has happened. So the only thing that I think that government can do is to find a way to transmit those subsidies that have been saved from paying, to importers of refined products, transmitting those monies into the various sectors of the transportation and logistics industry. Again, either by way of loans or by way of, subsidies to conversion to cheaper fueling.
All right, we seem to have lost connection with Segun Sopitan. He was talking about, some of the decisions made by the president in respect to the issue of exchange rate. He talked about it earlier. All right, Segun, hope you can hear me. Glad to have you back, if you can hear me.
Yes, sorry about that. I can hear you.
Sorry, the internet played a fast trick on you, we understand. So please go ahead with your talk.
Thank God for backup. Yeah, I'm back. So so like I was saying, I mean, it's for the president, and I must tell you, I don't envy the president. The challenge that he has in front of him today is not enviable at all. It's a very difficult job that he's taking on. It was already difficult, taking it on May 29 the way it was, and unfortunately, as a result of the policies that he himself has put in place, he's made it tougher for himself. It is what it is. One can only hope and pray that the president finds the answers that he needs to find desperately to ensure that we can find solutions to the escalating cost of living in the country.